You were supposed to fall apart. You were supposed to be broken, waiting, begging. He thought you'd be chasing after him, proving your worth, trying to be enough. He thought you'd be desperate, clinging to the hope that maybe, just maybe, he'd turn around and choose you. That maybe if you changed yourself, became smaller, quieter, more agreeable, more of whatever he wanted, you'd finally be enough. But you did something different. You didn't chase. You didn't cry out, pleading for attention. You didn't lose yourself trying to hold on to someone who was already letting go. Instead, you chose something greater. You chose yourself. And in that choice, in that moment of quiet strength, everything began to shift. Because here's the truth most people don't understand. The moment you stop running after someone who doesn't value you, you take back control of your life. The moment you stop waiting for validation from someone who doesn't see your worth, you free yourself. And freedom, that's where real transformation begins. Yes, it hurt. Yes, there were moments you questioned yourself, moments when doubt crept in, whispering, maybe I should try harder. Maybe I should have done more. But then something inside you awakened. A fire, a knowing, a deep realization that you were never meant to beg for love, never meant to prove your worth to someone who was blind to it. So instead of shrinking, you expanded. Instead of losing yourself in the pain, you found yourself in the process. You got up. You started working on yourself. You poured energy into your goals, your passions, your dreams. You surrounded yourself with people who lifted you, who reminded you of your brilliance. You healed. You grew. You became the version of yourself you were always meant to be, not because you wanted to prove anything to him, but because you finally understood that you were never the problem. And now, look at you. Stronger, wiser, more radiant than ever, no longer waiting, no longer chasing, no longer accepting the bare minimum. Because now you know what you deserve. And the person who once thought you'd be running after them, they see it too. They see the glow, the success, the happiness radiating from you. They see the way you've built a life they never imagined you could have without them. And now they wonder, they question, they regret. But here's the best part. By the time they realize what they lost, you're already gone, already too far ahead, already standing so firmly in your power that their absence no longer feels like a loss, but a blessing. Because this was never about them. It was always about you, about your growth, your healing, your journey to becoming unstoppable. And you did that not by chasing, not by pleading, not by breaking, but by rising. So let this be your reminder. You don't have to run after people who don't choose you. You don't have to prove your worth to anyone who can't see it. The right people, the right opportunities, the right love will never require you to beg. You are enough exactly as you are. And when you finally realize that, when you finally embrace it, you become untouchable. You didn't chase, you changed. You didn't break, you built. And that is your power. That is your victory. And this is just the beginning. You were supposed to fall apart. You were supposed to be broken, waiting, begging. He thought you'd be chasing after him, proving your worth, trying to be enough. He assumed you'd stay stuck in the cycle of hoping, waiting, and bending over backward just to earn a fraction of his attention. He believed you would be right there, lingering in the shadows, desperate for his return, for his validation, for his love. He thought he had you figured out, but he was wrong. Because instead of chasing, you chose yourself. Instead of waiting, you walked away. Instead of proving your worth to someone who never truly saw it, you embraced the undeniable truth. You were never the problem. And that realization, that changed everything. At first, it wasn't easy. It never is. The mind plays tricks on you, making you wonder if you made the right choice. Maybe if you held on a little longer, things would have been different. Maybe if you changed just a little more, if you softened your voice, if you ignored the red flags, if you accepted less than you deserved, maybe, just maybe, he would have stayed. But deep down, you knew better. Deep down, you knew that love isn't supposed to feel like a battlefield where you are the only one fighting. Love isn't supposed to feel like a puzzle where you are constantly rearranging yourself to fit into someone else's world. So you did what many people don't have the courage to do. You stopped running in circles. You took your energy back. You focused on what actually matters, your healing, your growth, your dreams. You stopped searching for closure in words that were never going to come, and instead found it in your own transformation. You turned your pain into a catalyst, into fuel, into a fire that burned away every version of you that ever believed you had to beg to be chosen. And now you stand taller. Now you walk with certainty. Now you understand that your worth was never tied to his presence, his approval, or his love. You were whole before him, and you are whole without him. And the most powerful thing, you didn't just survive, you thrived. While he expected you to break, you built. While he assumed you'd wait, you moved forward. And now, the same person who thought you'd be running after him is left wondering how he ever let you go. That's what happens when someone underestimates the strength of a person who finally chooses themselves. They expect you to mourn forever. They expect you to shrink in their absence. But you became unstoppable. And this is only the beginning, because now you know. Now you understand that walking away from the wrong people isn't a loss. It's a win. Now you see that the only love you ever needed to chase was the love within yourself. Now you recognize that you are the prize, and anyone who fails to see that never deserved a front row seat in your life anyway. So let this be your reminder. You don't have to chase anyone. You don't have to convince anyone of your worth. The right people will see you, appreciate you, and show up for you without hesitation. And the wrong ones, they will watch from a distance, wondering how they ever let someone like you slip away. But by the time they realize it, you will be far beyond their reach, living a life so full, so beautiful, and so undeniably yours. You didn't chase, you changed. And in that change, you found everything you were always meant to be. You were supposed to fall apart. You were supposed to be broken, waiting, begging. He thought you'd be chasing after him, desperate to hold on, willing to do anything to make him stay. He assumed you would keep reaching out, keep proving your worth, keep bending, keep hoping. He believed he had the power, that he could walk away and you would crumble, that he could leave and you would be right there waiting for his return. But he underestimated you, because instead of chasing, you let go. Instead of falling apart, you rose. Instead of begging for his attention, you redirected your energy toward yourself. It wasn't easy. At first, there were nights when the silence felt heavier than the goodbye, moments when the memories played on a loop in your mind, making you wonder if you had made the right choice. The urge to reach out, to fix things, to fight for what you once believed in, it was there. But something inside you knew better. You realized that love should never feel like an endless pursuit. It should never feel like you're running towards someone who keeps walking the opposite direction. Love is meant to be mutual, effortless in its recognition of worth, freely given, not something you have to earn by proving yourself over and over again. So you stopped proving, you stopped waiting, you stopped believing that your happiness was tied to someone else's ability to see you. And that was the moment everything changed. The moment you shifted your focus from what was lost to what could be built, from who left to who you were becoming, from needing their validation to recognizing your own. That was the moment you stepped into your power. At first, he didn't notice. He assumed you'd be back. He assumed your silence was temporary. He assumed you'd come running the moment he decided to reach out. But then time passed and you didn't return. Instead of looking for him, you were looking ahead. Instead of questioning your worth, you were building yourself up. You started walking differently, speaking differently, moving differently. Not for him, but for you. And when he finally realized what was happening, it was too late. Because the truth is, people always think they have time. They think they can push you away and you'll always come back. They think they can take you for granted and you'll always be there. But the most powerful thing you ever did was show him that you wouldn't. That once you learned your worth, once you understood what you truly deserved, once you stopped settling for less, you would never go back to what hurt you. And now, look at you. Thriving, glowing, standing in your power, no longer seeking love in places that never honored you, no longer accepting the bare minimum, no longer waiting for someone to recognize what you have always been. And him? He sees it now. He sees what he lost. He sees that the person he thought would always be there has outgrown him, has elevated beyond him, has moved into a space where his absence isn't a loss but a blessing. That's what happens when you stop chasing and start choosing yourself. You become untouchable. You become magnetic. You become the kind of person who doesn't need to beg for love because the right people will never need convincing. And the ones who didn't appreciate you, they will always realize it when it's too late. So here you are, standing tall, stronger than ever, not because someone saved you, not because someone finally gave you the love you were looking for, but because you gave it to yourself. Because you decided that you were worth more than waiting, worth more than chasing, worth more than anything less than real, deep, undeniable love. And that choice, that strength, that power, it changed everything. You were supposed to fall apart. You were supposed to be broken, waiting, begging. He thought you'd be chasing after him, trying to prove your worth, trying to be enough. He thought you'd spend your days overanalyzing every word, replaying every memory, wondering what you did wrong. He expected you to reach out, to ask for another chance, to accept the little he was willing to offer. He believed that walking away meant he had the power, that you would always be there, waiting, hoping, holding on. Because instead of chasing, you did something he never expected. You chose yourself. You let him go, not because you didn't care, not because it didn't hurt, but because you finally understood that you should never have to convince someone to see your value. You finally understood that love isn't about proving your worth to someone who doesn't recognize it. Love is about being cherished without having to ask for it. And so instead of running after someone who walked away, you stood still. You stopped. You looked in the mirror and asked yourself a different question. Not why wasn't I enough for him, but why was I ever trying to be? At first, it wasn't easy. The silence was loud. The habits were hard to break. You had spent so long making space for him in your life that it felt unfamiliar to be alone. But slowly, something shifted. The more you focused on yourself, the less power he had over you. The more you invested in your own growth, the less you felt the need to look back. Day by day, choice by choice, you began rebuilding your confidence, your joy, your dreams. And then something amazing happened. You stopped missing him. Not all at once, not overnight, but little by little. You stopped checking your phone, stopped wondering if he was thinking about you, stopped caring if you regretted his decision, because you were too busy creating a life that excited you. You were too focused on becoming the person you were always meant to be. And with each step forward, you realized that losing him was never the loss. It was the lesson. Meanwhile, he started to notice. He expected you to be there waiting. He expected you to keep fighting for his attention, to keep proving your worth. But when he finally looked back, you were gone. Not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually. You had outgrown the version of yourself that once needed his validation. And suddenly he was the one wondering. He was the one checking your social media, replaying old conversations, realizing what he had taken for granted. But here's the truth. By the time he realized your value, you no longer needed him to. You had already moved on. Not just from him, but from the version of yourself that would have settled for less than she deserved. You had already chosen yourself, and that choice had set you free. That's the power of walking away. That's the power of refusing to chase. It's not about playing games. It's not about making someone regret their choices. It's about realizing that your life is too valuable, your heart too precious, your energy too powerful to waste on someone who couldn't see your worth from the start. And now you're thriving. Now you're standing in your power. Now you're living a life that feels like yours again. And the people who once underestimated you, they're watching, wondering, regretting. But the realization doesn't matter anymore because you didn't chase. You changed. And in that change, you found everything you were always meant to be. You were supposed to fall apart. You were expected to struggle, to wait, to reach out in an attempt to restore what was lost. He assumed that without him, you would question your worth, replay every conversation, and wonder if you could have done something differently. He believed you would seek closure from him, that you would attempt to prove your value, that you would hold on despite his absence. However, his expectations were incorrect. Instead of seeking validation, you recognized the need to move forward. You acknowledge that your value is not determined by another person's recognition or lack thereof. You understood that a relationship that requires constant validation and pursuit is inherently imbalanced. Walking away was not an act of resignation, but of self-respect. This decision was not made lightly, but rather through the realization that your energy and effort should be directed toward personal growth rather than external approval. At first, adjusting to this mindset was challenging. Human nature often seeks patterns of familiarity, and letting go of someone who once occupied a significant place in your life required intentional effort. However, as time passed, you redirected your focus. Instead of questioning your worth, you concentrated on self-improvement. You invested in your goals, your well-being, and your aspirations. The space once filled by uncertainty and self-doubt became occupied by progress and self-assurance. As you continued on this path, the need for external validation diminished. You no longer sought reassurance from someone who had failed to recognize your value in the first place. The desire to chase or seek acknowledgement faded because you found fulfillment in areas that truly mattered. Personal development became the priority, and in doing so, you built a foundation that was not reliant on external approval. Eventually, the person who once assumed you would always be there began to take notice. It became evident that your life did not halt in his absence. He may have anticipated regret or hesitation on your part, yet what he witnessed was growth, confidence, and resilience. This realization likely led to reflection on his end, but by that time, his recognition no longer held the weight it once did. This outcome is not about seeking revenge or proving a point. It is not about creating a scenario where someone realizes their mistake too late. It is about understanding that your time and energy should be invested in areas that contribute to your well-being and success. A person who fails to appreciate your presence from the beginning is not someone whose approval should dictate your self-worth. Now you stand in a position of strength. You have cultivated a life that is fulfilling on its own terms. The need to chase or seek closure has been replaced by an understanding that your value remains intact regardless of who acknowledges it. The person who once assumed you would be waiting has now become a spectator to your growth, yet their perspective is no longer relevant to your progress. Ultimately, the most impactful decision you made was to prioritize yourself. In doing so, you not only move forward, but also demonstrated that self-worth is not something to be negotiated or proven. It is inherent. And once you recognize that, everything changes.